Good morning, and welcome to Tulane University. It is my pleasure to introduce our next session, Forging the Future Grid, a dialogue on resilience, flexibility, and AI.
Thank you, Rick.
If time allows, at the end of the session, the panel will take questions submitted by the audience. To submit a question, please scan the QR codes located on the screens. Please be sure to silence your cell phones. Enjoy the conversation, and please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator, Walter Isaacson, Leonard Lauder Professor of American History and Values.
Hey, thank you all for coming. Thank you for having me. Good to see such a crowd and so many bright lights here, so I can't see too many people. But we're talking today about the Forging the Future Grid. And we're here with Deanna Rodriguez, who is, everybody knows, is Entergy in New Orleans and president of Entergy in New Orleans. And before that, you were vice president for Entergy Texas. So thanks for moving up in the world to being with us. And you launched the first smart energy program, Energy Smart program, which we'll talk about. An old friend of mine, Tom Kuhn, who I know from many years, many decades, 3 decades, as president of the Edison Electric Institute, which helped strengthen the grid, expanded electrification, and cleaner power. Before that, you were at Alex Brown, if I remember, but that was in a previous century. And you've been a mentor to a lot of people, including our next guest, which is Arushi Sharma, who is the CEO of Luminary Strategies, an innovation leader and advisor on community energy resilience and AI data center integration. Got a lot of clients here, but particularly you have a passion for collaboration and trying to bring people together, which is what we need these days. And you were even at Tesla Puerto Rico for a little while, which I find interesting. Let's start with the question of collaboration. Now, I guess I'll start with you. We'll go down this way. What does collaboration for a company like Entergy mean between utilities, but then tech companies and communities?
It's an opportunity for us, and one of the, I think, the bright moments for Entergy New Orleans and Entergy Corporation is that we have a very sound history and shared value of collaboration. So we talked in prepping for this is the idea of talking to people who may not want to talk to you. And so I'm going to, like, the very personal piece of it is, why not? Why wouldn't you want to understand where people are coming from, even if they disagree? So we have a number of examples at Entergy New Orleans where we show up and we are asking for feedback, from town halls to hosting opportunities where we bring folks in and we have this discussion. It doesn't always have to include lawyers. My apologies to the lawyers in the room. So I think collaboration is exactly what we need in the future as we're moving much more quickly. And so there are problems to solve, and the best way to do is figure out who's against you, who's for you, and as long as everybody isn't happy, completely happy, I think we're going to make progress.
In some ways, the technology is a metaphor in terms of both the grid and in terms of network and in terms of the decentralized type of network we have for our information systems now. It all, instead of being a top-down system, since the invention of the internet and the web and other things, we have to have a distributed network in many ways. Do you see that sort of as just a metaphor, or does that sort of help inform the reality?
I think it's informing our reality. Even if we have a commodity, let's start with that. We have a commodity that everybody understands. You walk in the door and you flip a switch and the light goes on. If you have a storm and the lights don't go on, all of a sudden everything comes to a standstill. So how is it that we get communication out to our customers? How is it that we get communication out to our regulators? And so it's now a vast network. When I first started in this job, and I've been at the company 31 years, so I'm only 20, and the math doesn't work, but that's okay. But as I first got in this job 4 years ago, I got here 2 months before Ida. So all of a sudden, we had a situation where the power was clearly out. We had a terrible storm. And one of our council members who suggested, she goes, I can't do your job for you. You need to communicate more with your customers. So that's where it's the distributed part, is that how is it that we're working across functions, across commercial customers, residential customers, industrial customers, and with our regulators to figure out how we're combining that information to move forward.
Tom, since you're a forward-looking person, tell me how this type of collaboration is going to become more necessary in the age of AI, in the age of smart grids.
Well, terrific, Walter. Thank you, and it's an honor to be with you again. You have appeared before more EI CEO meetings than any other speaker, I think, and you were one of the favorites. And I'm sitting between two master collaborators who I admire so very much. But, you know, throughout my career at EEI, we collaborated with unlikely allies. We collaborated with environmental groups to make the grid cleaner. We collaborated with labor unions because the workforce was so very critical, and we said, look, whatever differences we might have, we're going to figure out a way to come together because we have the same common goals. And I really think right now in this industry, it's such an incredibly exciting time for the industry. Electricity is more and more important. It's 5% of the gross domestic product, but as I always say, it's the first 5% because without electricity, you don't have a gross domestic product. But I do think, as Deanna mentioned, everybody counts on it, and they're going to count on it even more with data centers and AI and increased electrification. So, I mean, I really do think that what you mentioned with all these new technologies, when I left EEI, I am now on the technology side of the business. And you mentioned communications, so the first company I went with was Entergy, which is marrying electricity and telecommunications to say that all this data we're going to have, massive amounts of data, because we're not only going to be serving data centers, we're going to be using a whole lot of AI and data in our operations to serve our customers, et cetera. So, you know, this is something that we're going to have to, for cybersecurity reasons and other reasons, this is something we're going to have to do. So, in the technology side, collaboration is a whole different ballgame, but it's more and more
With
important.
the advent of these AI data centers, one of which come into Louisiana, to what extent is that going to put more demand on the grid and energy generation, and how do we get there?
Well, I think it's such an exciting thing. I mean, I commend Entergy for, you know, and Louisiana and Tulane for the partnership, the governor, for bringing Meta here and the other data centers that are now going to be interested, and I think it's going to be a tremendous growth opportunity for this state, and such an exciting place to be. It's going to create some challenges, yes, but they're growth opportunity challenges, and it's going to be a new ball game. So it's very, very exciting. But I think it's not just generation, Walter. It's also, you know, this business used to be a simple business: generation, transmission, distribution, customer. It's so much different right now. In every respect, it's two-way communications. It's the idea that you have to use data and controls and sensors and things of that nature. The regulatory situation is changing dramatically in terms of how the electricity needs to be regulated. And so, I mean, it's going to open up a whole different way of doing business.
Arushi, you specialize in both creating this collaboration and trying to bring the innovation to the industry.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, so I started in the gas utility industry 2011. That's how I know Tom. I was at the American Gas Association, and Tom was running EEI. And what I find that has been the most useful, and the thing that I do the most of, which I did for Tesla, I built the retail energy platform and the market design for actually integrating distributed power into ERCOT's dispatch engine and the wholesale business that now runs large battery projects. So that work is the complete opposite of where I started in the gas utility industry. Along the way, what you learn is that you need one or two champions who are willing to learn the stuff of the other guy. And if you have champions, they could just be one or two people. It doesn't have to be a lot of folks. You don't need to convert an entire software segment of a utility to be able to do this work. But the biggest piece of this is to break the perception, and Deanna and I had a great conversation about this last week, that both sides are against the other side. I am 40 years old. I started in this industry at 25, at the very cusp of natural gas fracking taking over, and my entire career seems to be, Walter, multiple moments of explaining to the tech folks that the utility folks aren't evil, explain to the utility folks that the tech folks are not evil, and really one of the only reasons anyone listens to me, in addition to me being both a STEM person and an advocate, is that I've worked in both. And when I do what you do so much of, which is encourage the next generation of the folks who will run our electric grid, I tell them, please go work in both. Because if you don't do both, then the divides that keep technology from brute force getting into our utility and grid system and making everything work better for our country, it won't happen.
Let me ask you about something specific here in New Orleans. My friend Natalie Doherty is here, and I know you've talked to her. And there's on the docket of the City Council this battery project. Explain what that is and what you think about it, and I'll let anybody else who wants to weigh in too.
Newest challenge for utilities, including the one I used to work for, which is Constellation Exelon, is that new ways of creating energy come from people buying things and putting them in their house. And that challenge can be turned into an opportunity. So in this case, folks in New Orleans have solar on their roof. I believe you have about 10,000 meters that are net energy metering solar. When they add a battery to that system, the solar energy can be stored in the battery, utilized for sending power back to the grid, utilized to support that home during an outage. And that system, if you will, when you multiply and aggregate what the value of all of those systems can do with a battery attached, creates the opportunity to co-create value for the utility and all customers. That's called a virtual power plant. I've worked on starting these programs for Tesla in Puerto Rico, worked on the statewide program in Texas, and working with Together New Orleans and with Entergy as well. And Deanna's got a kicking team that's working on this right now. We're trying to figure out how to take the assets that are here, because people have the solar, more people are going to buy the batteries. How do we turn into co-created value for the utility and for the grid too?
And how do you make that work at the community level? Do people in a neighborhood sometimes collaborate on this, or is this something that comes from Entergy, or what?
It's really interesting. So it always starts with people who buy things. And I think most of us in the utility program design industry, including myself, with this idea about what we're going to do for people. But now if people have the things, you have to think about your entire business model of like, how do you make this thing that other people have, like private goods? How do you create public value, which is the whole point of utilities, to deliver benefits to
And
everyone.
how is that particularly important to New Orleans, where we do have the word resilience is used far too
Of course.
often?
But it's the same issue as Puerto Rico, Florida, coastal communities. Patty Poppy runs a very large program as CEO of PG&E in California on wildfire risk. Distributed assets are a additive, new way to add to the resilience investments of a utility. So here in New Orleans, for example, on a day-to-day basis, having solar power suddenly be something the local utility can use because you've added batteries, you communicate with the batteries, you can see the data coming in from the solar, which is not visibility you had before. That's a huge value add. The other piece of it is that you can actually monetize batteries as a solution for both people and the utility by sending power back to the grid, and that power can then support those homes if there's an outage. And in any coastal community, including New Orleans, Hurricane Ida as an example, there being power is a life-saving attribute in any community.
Tom, have you worked on some of these before?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at what changes in industry, technology, public policy, customers, those are the three things that really change an industry. And of them, I think I worked for a long time in the public policy business. Of them, probably technology is the strongest. And I really do think that, you have a situation where in our business right now, it's all on steroids. And technology, storage is one of the fastest growing technologies across, the industry, not only with respect to customers buying generators or backup batteries or using their electric vehicles to sell back into the grid. Data centers will have a situation where I think Drew Marsh mentioned yesterday, people are worried about whether or not the data centers will create a problem with loads. I think they'll stabilize loads because they can cycle back their use when they don't need it as much. It's not totally 24/7, 100 degree. So I really do think that, it's the technologies, and that's why I'm concentrating right now on the technology side of the equation, because I think that's where most of the excitement is going to be. And then the need, when you have all these different things like home storage, you need the communications networks to be able to communicate with the customers, to get automatic signals from the sensors, from the data, from the controls, to manage this whole system.
Deanna?
And
Sure. So I would bring it back to the fact that the regulatory compact with the utility and the customer. So we are required to serve all customers. And when we look at benefits for all customers, not one particular group, we also we are the bill collectors of these rates. And an opportunity for us is when we look at customers, we look at them and cost benefit for all. So we're actually working with the groups that Arushi's mentioned, and part of it required us to reach out and them reach out back to us. And there was a hesitation there because there was this idea of this, oh my God, they're never going to agree. But we are also regulated. So my concern always is the ultimate customer that receives the benefit. And if there's, I'll give you an example, if there's an opportunity for a low-income customer, it's all customers. It's not just one pocket or one neighborhood. While it sounds wonderful, we can do this, and we can find a way to at least pilot a project or work on that and look at the technology and see what works. We're still regulated, and my worry is always lots of other folks are not regulated. So they're not required. There is no regulatory compact. And many years ago, when we did have that influx of solar developers, it was a financing scheme. So forgive me if I'm a little hesitant in sort of being really careful. So there were, and you remember this, Walter, we had a lot of folks that came in, put solar panels on roofs that would probably cost more than the house itself. And then they went under and they left town, and guess who's left holding the bag? So we have to be really thoughtful and careful and look at the idea of, it's a great idea, but how do we make it to where everybody is accountable, everybody is responsible, and all customers benefit?
How should we be rethinking the regulatory regime so that it encourages both innovation and maybe people finding their own ways to create energy and store energy, while and not have a regulatory regime that makes it not in your interest as a company to do it?
And let me just say, it's not in our interest, it's not my interest, it's the interest of the customer.
Right.
So I do think that we have a city council that's very progressive and certainly very, tries to be very balanced in how they look at this. And ultimately, if the regulatory construct is such that we are threatened or attacked or whatever, and I've been to many a council meeting, and I encourage everybody, if you want to do something fun, watch a city council meeting, because it really is entertaining, but it's also government at work. I mean, it is really an important process, and that's the connection to the community that we have here. So I wouldn't change any of that. But in terms of innovation, I think I love that the fact that I get to run the smallest, everybody would probably say, you run the smallest utility in the Entergy system. The fact is we are also the most agile, the most nimble, the most receptive, the most interested in creating opportunities of new technology, working with our low-income customers. We created Energy Smart that goes into every home. We are looking at things like that, and so I guess I'm suggesting it's not broken. Let's just enhance what we have today and make it work for all of us.
You're inviting people to come to city council meetings to hear the Entergy hearings.
Yep.
I will say, 50 years ago, this is how old I am, I started by covering NOPSI, New Orleans
that's
Public
right.
Service Inc.'s hearings at City Hall in the city council with old.
Well, I invite all the people that like us to come too, because the fact is, those that, there are some professional attendees at these meetings, and it's not Entergy. And so there are opportunities for people that we employ. I mean, I can't say all of this without reminding everyone, we're one of the largest employers in the state. We give over $4 million annually to nonprofits. We are the lifeblood. We live here, we work here. We pay our own bills here, and we add about $1 billion to the economy having our corporate headquarters here. So there's nothing bad about that.
All right. So Tom, tell me what changes are happening to the grid that you think will have the most impact, and maybe two I'd suggest, if you pick one or both, is can't we get new battery technology? I mean, Ben Franklin invented the battery almost the way it is today, and that seems to be a gating factor to this. And then secondly, if you want to duck that one, you can do AI.
Well, I think that Arushi can probably answer that better working for Tesla, but battery technology didn't improve for hundreds of years. Then all of a sudden, Tesla came along, and they really were focused very, very strongly on batteries, and it's changed dramatically since then. I bought the first Tesla. It had a range of about 20 miles, I think, on electricity only. Now it's got 3 or 4.
You had the Roadster?
Yeah, all right. No, it was actually before that. It was a General Motors EV1.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But anyway, what's changing I think in so much in technology, and it's going to change so much more in the future. When you look at the fact that we are going to be not only serving data centers, we're going to be using AI a whole lot more for everything, to determine when equipment needs to be replaced, to determine, what needs to be done for the customers, and it's going to require a whole lot of communications technologies to make that happen. This is why I went, now executive chairman of Antergy, which is the largest private wireless broadband provider in the country, and it is. The idea is with all that data and the sensors and the controls you need, millions and millions of data is going to be flowing through the system. You want your own private networks to do it. For cybersecurity reasons, we're going to be more vulnerable, actually, to a situation where a few 100,000 people in China that are working on cyber right now can stop the system, and I think that, so if you can disengage from the public networks, that's an advantage. And thirdly, just the efficiencies you're going to get from all the operations are going to continue to address one of the biggest challenges we have, which is affordability. And particularly here in NOPSI and Louisiana, that's a big thing because there's a big disparity between the people that the electric bill is not that big a deal for them, and for other customers where it may be life and death. So I really do think that those things are going to change the way we operate and change the way we deal with technologies in a major way. But, you know, you start with the utilities out there, if you believe it, they're interested in serving the customer in the best way. They start with that, you know, so it's not, you know, how can I rip the customer off by coming in and putting something in, you know, that's going to hurt them. The regulators are there too. They're out there to defend the customers. Now, the regulators have to move maybe quicker in the future because the adoption of technologies is going to happen a whole lot faster than in the past. But, you know, people are serving the same interests and they have the same goals. So I think we can get to the right place.
Arushi, I sometimes feel when people talk about AI, it becomes this broad, wonderful, amazing things, and other than chat bots, I'm not quite sure what's really happening now with AI that affects how the grid operates and other things. Can you give me some specific examples?
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the most interesting ones right now is this issue of adding new stuff to the grid. It can be anything. We're trying to do new power plants. We're adding more cyber trucks to people's homes, and so the local grid needs to figure out how to accommodate all of that sudden charging that's happening at 7 o'clock. We don't have great software tools today at all of the different kinds of operators and utilities, and in the US, unlike the UK or Australia, we have at least 3,300 different utilities, like literal entities, that all manage their little part of the grid. So one of the things that AI is doing right now as a tool set is creating ways for very complex, almost fiefdoms of different little grids in the United States to use the same sort of study process or analysis process to decide how to bring things to the grid faster and upgrade the grid better. And in any environment where we've had disparate technology for 50 years, for 100 years, when suddenly there's a common baseline that can be facilitated by a program on a computer that's connected to physical equipment, and then you can quickly share that with all of the utilities in your neighboring area, and you can decide, like, oh, this actually works for all of us. We've created a new economic efficiency that is like the #1 piece of the president's blueprint that I find to be the most transformative for our country. Because as a national government, we can't tell all 3,000 utilities what to do. But if we're promoting AI as a tool to solve common denominator problems, so everybody studies their grids the same way for the first time, we then start to do the things we need at the national level. We want more power plants. We want more steel in the ground. We want batteries. We want more gas plants. We want all these things. We have to come up with a common standard to study them and bring them to the system, and that is what AI is going to help us with.
Hey, Arushi, can I pop in here for just a minute? You know, there's so many uses of AI that are going to pop up in the future. I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, we talk about reliability, right? Resilience is a part of reliability. Reliability is having the lights on 24/7. Resilience is sometimes extreme weather or storms or whatever come along and we've got to recover, whatever. So there's for example, one of the things I'm very proud of, we put a partnership together with the federal government to recover, you know, from storms. And it really, we used to be fighting with each other, fighting with FEMA and on Katrina as to what the priorities were. Now it's a partnership. But there's you know, we bring in 50,000 people to deal with a storm, 50,000 crews, bucket trucks, et cetera. We initiated this with the president, and it's a magic situation. But if you can imagine bringing that many crews into a place where they're not familiar with. If you have a hurricane in Florida, you'll see Entergy trucks. So what is an Entergy truck doing in Florida? You know, there's tons of crews. It's a major operation. So we use artificial intelligence to a company that really specializes in that to make sure you're allocating people to the right places, make sure you're doing the right things, make sure you're doing it faster, because it used to take us 2 weeks to recover for a storm. Now, if it's out for 2 hours, people are upset. So it's more critical and crucial for, you know, for wildfires, which are happening everywhere right now. There's artificial intelligence that's dealing with the models and the data where is the most likely place for a wildfire to pop out? If you're having public safety power shutoffs, people, that's not good business to shut people off. People get upset at that. But
So
if you
Deanna, tell me what technologies are most exciting you now? What's going to be most
There's
transformative?
all kinds of exciting technology that we're starting to use, and some we've been using, but I would link it back to affordability, because it impacts everyone. If you can use the knowledge that we have that we're collecting and in self-healing networks and smart information that we are now collecting, if you can use a self-healing network to perhaps keep other people from, and limit an outage that occurs, that's one way. We have a drone project, so everybody is using drones, and now you can have Amazon deliver probably tacos or whatever, and fast food via drone. We're using drones, and we have been using drones to inspect lines. The difference now with AI is now it's receiving the data and it's using the data in a predictive mode. And so we're piloting that project, talk about innovation and using things in New Orleans and technology. We're integrating it as a pilot in New Orleans to do exactly that. So it's collecting the information, checking the lines, looking at whether, if there's anything on the lines, and then now it's collecting what is the age of that line, is there any problem, has a lightning struck that particular line, what are we doing with that information? And it can be predictive, and it can be teaching us where to go. It also, very practically speaking, is do you have to roll a truck or not? Yes. Again, cost and affordability. If we can do this in a way that limits having to send people out physically, it's not only time of the employee, but it's cost to a customer. So there's, I think, a lot to be learned, and then a lot that will happen very quickly that we have to move faster and adapt to more
It probably
quickly.
wasn't too long ago where customers had to call you to tell you that they were out. I mean, it was ridiculous.
We do that with our call center too. Our call agents are using it. Again, it is AI that is looking at call agents verbatims, taking that information. What are we learning? Where's this going? How can we serve the customer that much more
And you're also
quickly?
doing a good job getting the information back, because I'll go online all the time looking at the Entergy maps, and they're updating.
That's right.
Instantly. But let me ask you, let's leave AI aside. What other technologies, whether it be storage technologies or whatever, do you see as being transformative?
Oh. I think it's all going to be about AI.
Okay.
It really is. In terms of new generation, we are not looking at carbon capture, but we happen to live in Louisiana. Entergy Louisiana is looking at that. Small modular reactors, that's another opportunity. I think that's going to transform the entire nature of how we receive, power. But I do think AI is going to make everything faster. I'm not sure it's going to make it better all across the board, but I know it's going to make it faster, and it will make it different. So I hope AI helps our city bring people back. So any opportunities,
We'll
any
talk about that for a
investors
moment,
on
then we'll
that?
get to the question,
Yeah.
because you've been passionate on, we have to grow the city.
We have to
Go
grow the
ahead.
city, and I invite any business owners, anybody out here who wants to come to our city, please do. We're sitting at Tulane, and I know that Fitz is, the president of Tulane, is sitting here saying, we have all these amazing students that come here, many of whom want to stay here. So how do we do that? And you're funding businesses, you're partnering with businesses, we're partnering. We have, I'll make a shameless pitch for 9 sites in New Orleans East that have been identified to hopefully draw manufacturing, warehousing, anything we can do. Because again, back to affordability, the best way to be more affordable, more resilient is it's all math. It's if we can grow the city, we all own the grid, that allows us to reduce costs for everyone.
How important is charity in the downtown
It's
innovation
huge.
zone?
It's, again, the anchor to the entire bioinnovation district. That is 1 million square feet that is meaningful to the entire city, not just historically, but going forward. That is the future. The River District is another opportunity. There are folks that want to come and stay, and I'll sell more electricity if I can, but I can't do it unless people are moving here. And right now, it is up to all of us to get people to stay.
Well, thanks for the cooperation you've done with Tulane and others
Absolutely.
on getting the downtown medical and campus and charity
It's exciting.
closer to being a reality. I don't know if it will be, but it
Well,
seems to me.
congratulations to Tulane on
But it
that.
seems to me the single most important thing we could do for this city. All right, we're going to have some questions, and they gave me all sorts of instructions about QR codes and things, so I'm going to just sit here since I don't remember what I'm supposed to do.
We
Are
have
they
QR
popping
codes
up?
on our trucks now, too.
What?
We have QR codes on our trucks now, too.
Well,
First
all my
question.
Amazon. All right, questions?
If every part of the grid becomes intelligent, how much energy can be saved, and is it more than what AI data centers use?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
couldn't really
it's,
hear that
I'll
question.
ask Arushi this. If every part of the grid becomes intelligent, will that end up saving more than the cost of having the energy for the data centers will be?
So
That was a
everyone knows who
paraphrase.
Phil Harris is. He is the founding operational mastermind behind the PJM interconnection, right, the mid-Atlantic area of our country, the largest aggregation of one big grid that we have that's all organized. Phil's thesis is about the superhighway of transmission. And if you read anything about the news, about any Congress, since Trump 1, Biden, Trump 2, we care a lot about this thing which is called permitting for transmission lines. If we can solve the policy challenge, then we will be able to use more tools, which may or may not be AI, even classic engineering is good enough, to send more power from point A to point B. So it doesn't become then a question of saving energy, it's a question of increasing transferability across the United States.
So you need permitting reform
And
to
you
both
need-
upgrade the grid and to have
Absolutely.
long-distance transmission.
And I said, Walter, you asked me about the earlier question, and I responded there are 3,000 utilities. We got to get utilities inside states that own and operate the transmission system to agree into that network sharing approach. In that space, I think AI is going to be very helpful. Help us solve things that we haven't been able to figure out for decades, right? Even if we build the power in point A to get it to point C, how do we do it with a model that shows everybody that the cost of getting that infrastructure built is fair and fairly allocated?
Yeah.
I think AI will solve that.
Next question.
I think the answer
Oh,
is
sorry.
yes, though. I mean, it really is. I mean, you've got to have faith in technology. I'm on the board of a Bill Gates nuclear company, building the first advanced nuclear reactor. We don't need a containment vessel, because you have so much less cement and steel and stuff, so you save a ton of money doing that. I'm working on the board of another company that is on the transmission side, where it's grid-enhancing technologies that can put 2 to 3 times the amount through a wire than the ones you have right now. I mean, and these are all coming from intelligent solutions that are done by engineers coming out of Tulane, along with the legal and other experts that are doing these things. We need the communications to hang it all together and to make sure people are interconnected and communicating with each other.
Did
But
you
it-
want to add something, Deanna?
it's
Oh,
gonna
okay,
happen.
next question from the voice of God, yes.
How can we modernize our electric grid efficiently with AI, given that our grid is in need of upgrades in terms of transmission lines and transformers?
Yeah, I don't know if we've kind of done that question already, but did you want to add anything that needs to be added, like transformer problems or?
I do think that, this is worldwide, we're talking about worldwide issues. EEI, represents companies in 90 different countries, so the discussions we're having around the world. Yes, transmission is looked upon as a technology that hasn't changed for hundreds of years. It is changing dramatically right now. We need to expand it a whole lot. Transformer are expanding, they're getting more efficient. And the idea that you can use drones to, look at lines, feed the data back, get them into a system where the engineers can figure out what's the best way to do things. it's all changing.
I think we're in that transition phase right now too, because we still have what we have. And some of it is 40 to 50 years old. And unless we upgrade the current existing lines to the newer technologies, adding self-healing networks, all of that. So it's the combination. I think you have to do both. You have to certainly invest, which we're doing with our resilience. We're in phase 1 of our resilience program, and we actually applied for a grant. We got $55 million. But that is an opportunity now that we've got to pick up where we've left off, which is rebuild the grid that exists today, make it to higher standards. We're going back to the city council late this year. Again, this is an ongoing opportunity. We are now having faster storms. Back to what do? You still have lines. And until there's a new technology that replaces the current grid that we have today, we have to, at a minimum, increase the standards that we are existing under today and make it more resilient.
A small pitch I'm going to do, even though I'm not on the panel, is material science and chemical and material engineering.
Yes.
Seems to be the laggard here, and it may be the most important thing we can be teaching. In terms of batteries, we're still using lithium ion and other old technologies. In terms of transmissions, we haven't had some breakthrough in how you make a transformer, or for that matter, copper or something, better transmission materials. And I think even though AI and software is going to dazzle us, the important thing will be the hands-on physical things that material engineers will do, and that's what Tesla did so well.
One of the, Tesla has announced just now that they're going to start making transformers, right? They just had this announcement.
Who did?
Tesla.
Yeah,
last week in conjunction with their announcement of the mega block. The thing about transformers is like everything else that we're trying to make in this country, again, is that when you make these things, you also have to move them, and when you move them, you have to maintain them. So creating this physicality of supply chain goes exactly to your point, that if we're not teaching the skills around the making and maintaining, then we can't really do the building.
We need essential workers who know how to do that. And we also need people who, when they hear the word transformer, don't think of AI transformer models. They think of real transformers that actually enable to shift electricity. Question?
In regard to tariffs, what is the counter to price volatility for expanding the grid and improving sustainability costs?
That tariff was the word?
Yes.
That's a supply chain question for us. And in fact, making sure we have enough transformers to match the growth that we're seeing. But that is certainly, uncertainty is the challenge for every industry. And Entergy is seeing the growth that it's seeing. We've been very careful and calculated in how we try to get the best prices back to our, word of the day, affordability. How do we keep prices down, and how do we plan? We're planning 5 years to 10 years out in the future. So prices today and buying things today has an impact on the next, 10, 20 years, and as long as these products are in service, or a lifetime, some of them 40 years or more. So I think we're going to have to manage it. It's certainly something we watch every day, and it's managed ongoing.
Question?
Final question. As the grid and energy system become more digitized and smart, can you address the needed approach to cybersecurity of the critical infrastructure?
Cybersecurity.
I think cybersecurity is an issue that every CEO loses sleep over. It's the kind of thing that, again, can shut down a system. I remember in a meeting with the president after Hurricane Sandy, where we had bucket trucks being flown across the country with this new partnership that we had. And I said, Mr. President, I want to make sure we continue this partnership to fight storms. But there's one other issue, cybersecurity, that I think we need to work on. So now Drew Marsh and the CEOs of the industry or with the highest levels of government and talking about cybersecurity. There are a few 100,000 people right now in China that are dealing with cybersecurity, not necessarily stealing your information, but how to shut down the electrical grid, which is the most critical infrastructure industry, in the case there is a overall situation that might warrant it. So I think there's going to be a lot of use of AI in terms of defensive purposes to deal with the cyber issues. But the partnerships, again, if I were going to end with something, I would say, make sure we continue to work with partners, make sure we work together on issues like cybersecurity to ensure that we are ahead of the curve of the rest of the world.
Well, we're about out of time, but how many attacks do you get in a given week?
Oh, I don't know. And I know that I don't, thank goodness I don't know, because I'm not in charge of cyber. But I think that it is constant. When I hear of, at least from our chief IT person, when they say what you don't know is how many they've prevented and how many opportunities that people have tried. So it's a pretty scary number.
Last word?
Redundancy. Yeah. My first year in the industry, San Bruno pipeline exploded in California. I'm trying to figure out what happened. DHS for the first time realized because of that investigation, the Chinese have been in our gas transmission system for 20 years. So now redundancy in our systems, all the stuff we've talked about, reduces impact of cyber attack. And that's the thing to remember is every time you create layers and those layers get compromised, if there are base layers under it that still keep working, that's how we'll keep networks going.
Arushi, thank you. Tom, thank you. Deanna,
You bet.
thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Deanna, you were great.
Thank you for joining us for this session. Our next session in this space will be a conversation.